At 2 in the morning, my phone buzzed against the nightstand like an angry wasp. The blue glow cut through our bedroom darkness, showing Sophie's empty side of the bed. Still warm, but empty. Story of our marriage right there. The text made my stomach drop. I don't owe you an explanation about where I'm going. You're not my master, and I'm not your pet. I stared at those words for a full minute, sitting there in my boxers and old company t-shirt. 15 years of marriage, and this is what it came down to. A text message at 2 a.m. while she's out doing God knows what with God knows who. My fingers moved before my brain caught up. Then you'd better start looking for a shelter. You don't have a home here anymore. Send. The response came faster than I expected. Then another. Then my phone started ringing. 43 missed calls in 10 minutes, each one more frantic than the last. I'm Eli North, co-owner of North Industrial Supply here in Millfield, Maine. 42 years old, calloused hands, and apparently the world's biggest fool. I built this business from nothing, bought us a house with my own sweat, and thought I had a marriage worth saving. Shows what I know. Sophie North, née Hartwell, Human Resources Director at Millfield General Hospital. Beautiful, ambitious, and apparently tired of being married to a guy who smells like motor oil and lumber. She wanted status. I gave her stability. Guess that wasn't enough. By morning, I was already at Home Depot buying new locks. The kid at the checkout counter looked at me funny when I bought 6 deadbolts and a complete door handle set. Moving in or moving out? He asked, trying to make conversation. Neither, I said. Spring cleaning. The installation took me 3 hours. I'm good with my hands, always have been. Sophie used to say she liked a man who could fix things. Funny how she never mentioned she preferred a man who could break them, too. I was tightening the last screw on the back door when Mrs. Cundy appeared at the fence. Eleanor Cundy, 73 years old, knows everyone's business before they do. In a Stephen King novel, she'd be the one warning about the monsters. In real life, she just makes really good coffee and remembers everything. Working early today, Eli? Just some maintenance, Mrs. Cundy. Saw Sophie leave around midnight, dressed awfully nice for a Tuesday night. I kept my face neutral. She had a work thing. Mrs. Cundy's tone suggested she knew exactly what kind of work thing. That Brandon Keller's been around the neighborhood quite a bit lately. Drives that fancy electric car. Brandon Keller, regional sales executive for some medical supply company, mid-30s, perfect teeth, and the kind of confidence that comes from never having to fix your own plumbing. I'd met him at a few hospital functions. Sophie always lit up when he was around. Thanks for keeping an eye out, I told Mrs. Cundy. Anytime, dear. Coffee's always on if you need to talk. By noon, Sophie was standing on our front porch, looking confused and increasingly angry as her key wouldn't turn in the lock. I watched through the kitchen window as she tried every key on her ring twice. She started pounding on the door. Eli, open this door right now! I took my time walking over, opened it just wide enough to see her face. She looked tired, makeup smudged, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. The black dress she'd bought for work events. What did you do to the locks? Spring cleaning, I said. Amazing what you can accomplish when you're not sleeping. This is my house too. Is it? I kept my voice level. Because your text suggested you had other priorities. Sophie's face went through several emotions at once. Anger, guilt, calculation. She settled on indignation. You can't lock me out of my own home. I'm not locking you out. I'm locking the wrong people out. If you're my wife, you'll act like it. If you're not, then you don't live here. Eli, we need to talk. We needed to talk 6 months ago. We needed to talk when you started working late every Tuesday and Thursday. We needed to talk when you started dressing like you were going to nightclubs instead of budget meetings. Before we deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it instinctively, and I saw her face change. Softer, the way it used to change when I texted her. "Who's that?" I asked. "Work." "Brandon?" The name hit her like cold water. She straightened up, defensive. "It's complicated." "No, it's really not. You're either married or you're not. You're either faithful or you're not. You're either honest or you're not. Pretty simple from where I'm standing." "You don't understand the pressure I'm under at work. Brandon has been helping me navigate some difficult situations." "I bet he has." Sophie's phone buzzed again. This time she ignored it, but I could see the effort it took. "Let me in, Eli. We can work this out." "Can we? Because I checked our joint account this morning. Interesting pattern of charges. Restaurants I've never been to, hotels during your conference weekends, gas stations on the other side of town." Her face went pale. "You're spying on me?" "I'm paying attention, finally. Should have done it months ago." "Eli, please. I made some mistakes, but we can fix this." "Maybe, but not today. Today you figure out where you're going to stay. Tomorrow we'll see if you remember how to tell the truth." I started to close the door, but she put her hand against it. "What about my clothes? My things?" "Your things will be here when you are. Really here. Not just using this place as a hotel between your real life." "Where am I supposed to go?" "You seem to have figured that out just fine lately." I closed the door and turned the new deadbolt. Sophie stood on the porch for another 10 minutes, making phone calls. Through the window, I watched her pace back and forth, gesturing angrily. Finally, a silver Tesla pulled into our driveway. Brandon Keller got out, all concerned and protective. He put his arm around Sophie's shoulders, and she melted into him like she used to melt into me. They talked for a few minutes, then got in his car and drove away. Mrs. Cundy appeared at her window, coffee cup in hand, watching the whole show. She caught my eye through the kitchen window and gave me a small nod, like she was saying, "About time." My phone rang, Sophie's number. "This isn't over," she said when I answered. "No," I agreed. "It's not." But for the first time in months, I felt like I might have some control over how it ended. Wednesday morning, I drove to the office early. North Industrial Supply sits in a converted warehouse on the edge of Millfield's industrial district. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. Well, mine and my business partner Jake's. But Jake retired to Florida 2 years ago and left me running the show. Barb Henley was already at her desk when I walked in. 62 years old, gray hair pulled back in a bun that could deflect bullets, and a stare that made grown contractors apologize for things they hadn't done yet. She'd been our office manager for 8 years, and I trusted her more than most family members. "You look like hell," she said, without looking up from her computer. "Thanks, Barb. Really what I needed to hear." "Coffee's fresh. Made it strong." She finally looked at me, taking in my rumpled shirt and the fact that I hadn't shaved. "Sophie finally push you too far?" Barb had never liked Sophie. Said she was too polished, too ambitious for a guy like me. I'd always defended my wife, but lately, Barb's warnings were looking more like prophecies. "What do you know?" "I know she's been calling here asking about your schedule. I know she's been asking questions about company finances. And I know Brandon Keller's been sniffing around, claiming he wants to discuss partnership opportunities." I poured coffee from the pot Barb kept brewing all day. It was strong enough to jolt anyone awake, just how I needed it. "Partnership opportunities?" That's what he said. Wanted to know about our client list, our contracts with the hospital, real interested in our billing procedures. Something cold settled in my stomach. Sophie handled HR for the hospital. She'd know which companies had contracts, which ones were up for renewal, and she'd know exactly how to use that information. "Did you tell him anything?" Barb gave me a look that could freeze water. "What do you think?" "I think you're the smartest person in this building." "Damn right." "But Eli, there's something else. Sophie's been here." "When?" 3 weeks ago. Said she wanted to surprise you for your anniversary. Asked if she could look through your office. Said she was planning something special." Our anniversary was 4 months away, and Sophie hadn't planned anything special for me since our 5th year of marriage. Did you let her? Course not. But she had keys. Right. I'd given Sophie keys to the office years ago, back when we were actually partners in life instead of just on paper. She'd used them to get in after hours, probably when she knew I'd be home watching television, thinking she was working late. I need to check something, I said, heading toward my office. My desk looked normal, but I knew Sophie well enough to spot the signs. Papers not quite where I'd left them. My computer moved slightly. Sophie was always adjusting things, said I was too messy. I booted up the system and checked the access logs. Sure enough. 3 different dates over the past month, Sophie had logged into my computer using the password I'd stupidly shared with her years ago. She'd accessed client files, contract information, and most interesting of all, our proposal for the hospital's new equipment contract. The contract we'd lost to a company I'd never heard of. A company that somehow knew exactly what to bid and exactly what terms to offer. I printed out the access logs and walked back to Barb's desk. Look at this. Barb studied the papers, her expression getting darker with each line. That little witch. She's been feeding information to Brandon. He's probably working with whatever company underbid us. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, the front door chimed. Sophie walked in, looking professional, in a navy blue suit I'd bought her for Christmas. She smiled at Barb like nothing had happened. Morning, Barb. Is Eli in? He's in, Barb said, her voice flat as a pancake. Sophie walked toward my office like she owned the place. I intercepted her halfway. We need to talk, she said. Yes, we do. But not here. I looked around the office. 2 of my guys were pretending not to listen while they sorted inventory. Let's take a ride. We drove to Riverside Park in silence. Sophie kept checking her phone, typing quick responses. I parked overlooking the Penobscot River, where we used to come when we were dating, back when she actually enjoyed spending time with me. Eli, about yesterday. About 3 weeks ago, I interrupted, when you were in my office going through my files. Sophie's face went carefully blank. I don't know what you mean. Computer logs don't lie, Sophie, unlike people. She stared out at the water for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, colder. You were never going to be enough. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my face steady. Enough for what? For the life I want, the life I deserve. She turned to look at me, and I saw a stranger behind her eyes. You're content running a little supply company in a nothing town. You're content with this house, this life, this mediocrity. And Brandon's not? Brandon understands ambition. He understands that sometimes you have to take opportunities when they come. Even if it means destroying your husband's business? Sophie shrugged. You'll survive. You always do. You'll fix whatever breaks and keep going. Just like always. And our marriage? What marriage, Eli? When's the last time we talked about anything that mattered? When's the last time you surprised me, or took me somewhere nice, or acted like I was more than just your business partner and roommate? She wasn't entirely wrong, and that made it hurt worse. I had gotten comfortable. I had stopped trying as hard. But I'd never stopped being faithful. So you decided to find someone who would. I decided to find someone who saw my potential, instead of just accepting my presence. My phone buzzed. Text message from a number I didn't recognize. Check your email. Thought you should know. A friend. I opened my email app. Someone had sent me a series of photos. Sophie and Brandon at restaurants I couldn't afford. Sophie and Brandon at a hotel in Bangor. Sophie and Brandon in what looked like his apartment, and she wasn't wearing much. Sophie saw my expression change. What is it? I handed her the phone, watched her face go from confusion to horror to anger. Who sent these? Does it matter? Eli, I can explain. Can you? Because these are dated over the past 2 months. 2 months of you lying to my face every single day. Sophie's phone rang. She glanced at it, and I saw Brandon's name on the screen. Answer it, I said. What? Answer it. Let's see what he has to say. Sophie hesitated, then swiped to accept the call. Hey, she said, her voice artificially bright. I'm just talking with Eli about us. I could hear Brandon's voice through the phone, tinny but clear. Good. It's time he knew. We can't keep sneaking around forever. Brandon, maybe we should… Sophie, you said you were ready to leave him. Was that just talk? Sophie looked at me, her face a mixture of guilt and defiance. No, it wasn't just talk. Then come over. We'll figure out the details later. The line went quiet. Sophie lowered the phone, staring at me like she was seeing me for the first time. So, that's it? I asked. I guess it is. I started the truck. Then let's go get your things. The drive back to the house was silent, except for Sophie's occasional text messages, probably coordinating with Brandon, planning their next move. I found myself thinking about Mrs. Cundy's coffee, about Barb's loyalty, about all the people who'd tried to warn me while I was too stubborn to listen. When we pulled into the driveway, Brandon's Tesla was already there. He got out as we parked, all smiles and confidence, like he'd won something. Eli, he said, extending his hand like we were old friends. I hope we can handle this like adults. I looked at his hand, then at his face. Adults don't steal other men's wives. Nobody stole anybody. Sophie made her own choice. After you spent months manipulating her and using her to sabotage my business. Brandon's smile faltered slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Sophie was already walking toward the house, keys in hand. She stopped when her key didn't work, remembering yesterday's lock change. Eli, can you please open the door so I can get my things? I unlocked the door and stepped aside. Sophie and Brandon walked in like they owned the place, and I followed them upstairs to our bedroom. Watched Sophie pack clothes I'd bought her, jewelry I'd given her, books we'd read together. Brandon stood by the window, looking out at the yard I'd spent 10 years landscaping. Nice place, he said. Sophie says you did most of the work yourself. All of it. Must be satisfying, working with your hands. There was something condescending in his tone, like he was talking to a child who'd built a nice sandcastle. It is, I said, especially when you're building something that lasts. Sophie zipped up her suitcase and turned to face me. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. Uncertain, maybe a little sad. I'll come back for the rest later. Will you? Eli, I know this is hard, but maybe it's for the best. We haven't been happy for a long time. You haven't been happy. I was just too stupid to notice. Brandon put his arm around Sophie's shoulders. Come on, babe, let's go. They walked out of my bedroom, down the stairs I'd refinished, through the kitchen I'd remodeled, out the front door I'd just learned to lock properly. I watched from the window as they loaded Sophie's suitcase into the Tesla, watched Brandon hold the car door for her like a gentleman, watched my wife of 15 years drive away with another man. Mrs. Cundy appeared at her fence again, coffee cup in hand. You okay, Eli? Getting there, I said. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I actually meant it. Thursday morning brought rain and clarity in equal measure. I'd spent Wednesday night in my workshop, building nothing in particular, but keeping my hands busy while my brain processed everything. Sophie was gone. My marriage was over, and I had a choice to make. I could curl up and feel sorry for myself, or I could remind everyone in Millfield exactly who Eli North was. I chose option 2. First stop, the bank. I moved my personal accounts to a different institution, one where Sophie had never been. Then I called our lawyer, Jim Parsons, and set up an appointment. Jim had handled our wills and the business incorporation. Now, he'd handle the divorce. "I'm sorry to hear this, Eli," Jim said when I explained the situation. "But I have to ask, do you have evidence of the affair?" I showed him the photos someone had emailed me. Jim studied them with the detached professionalism of a man who'd seen too many marriages fall apart. "This helps. Maine allows for fault-based divorce. Adultery qualifies." "What about the business espionage?" "Harder to prove, but if you have documentation—" I handed him the computer access logs and copies of the files Sophie had viewed. "This is good," Jim said. "Very good. She used information obtained through her position as your spouse to damage your business. That's not just adultery, that's economic interference. What can we do about it?" "Plenty. But Eli, are you sure you want to go nuclear? Sometimes it's better to just make a clean break." I thought about Sophie's words in the truck. "You were never going to be enough." I thought about Brandon's condescending smile. I thought about 15 years of marriage destroyed by two people who thought I was too stupid to fight back. "Nuclear sounds about right." Jim smiled grimly. "Then let's give them something to remember you by." My next stop was the office. Barb was training our new inventory clerk, a kid named Tommy who looked about 16 but claimed to be 22. "How'd it go yesterday?" Barb asked. "She's gone. Moved in with Brandon, I assume." "Good riddance." "Maybe. But I need a favor." Barb's eyes lit up. She'd been waiting for this conversation. "Remember that hospital contract we lost last month? The one where the winning company somehow knew exactly what to bid?" Med Supply Solutions. Never heard of them before. "I need you to do some research. Find out who owns Med Supply Solutions. Find out who their sales reps are. Find out everything you can." "Legal research?" "Completely legal. Public records, business filings, that sort of thing." Barb cracked her knuckles. "Consider it done." While Barb worked her magic, I made some calls of my own. Millfield's a small town, and the business community is even smaller. Everyone knows everyone, and favors get remembered. My first call was to Pete Morrison, who ran Morrison Construction. Pete and I had done business for years, and he owed me a favor from when I'd gotten him emergency supplies for a weekend job. "Pete, I need some information about Brandon Keller. Drives a silver Tesla, works for some medical supply company." "Brandon Keller? Yeah, I know that guy. Tried to get me to switch suppliers last year. Real pushy." "Why?" "He's been interfering with my business. I'd like to return the favor." Pete chuckled. "What do you need?" "Anything you can tell me about his reputation, his business practices, who he's connected to." "I'll make some calls." My second call was to Maria Santos, who handled purchasing for 3 of the smaller medical practices in town. Maria was sharp, honest, and didn't like being manipulated. "Maria, it's Eli North. I have a question about Med Supply Solutions." "That new company? They underbid you on the hospital contract, right?" "Right. What do you know about them?" "Not much, but I can tell you their sales rep has been very aggressive. Keeps calling, offering deals that seem too good to be true. You know what they say about deals like that." "They usually are too good to be true." "Exactly. Why?" I explained about Sophie and Brandon, keeping it professional, but making sure Maria understood the personal angle. "That's terrible, Eli. I'm so sorry." "I appreciate that, but right now, I'm more interested in making sure our community knows what kind of people they're dealing with." "What can I do to help?" By noon, I had a clearer picture. Med Supply Solutions was a shell company, registered in Delaware but operating out of a P.O. box in Bangor. Their only local presence was Brandon Keller, who'd been making aggressive sales calls throughout central Maine. More interesting, several business owners had complained about Brandon's tactics: high-pressure sales, promises he couldn't keep, and a tendency to badmouth local competitors. Pete Morrison had heard rumors that Brandon was involved in some kind of kickback scheme with hospital administrators. Barb knocked on my office door. "Got something for you." She handed me a folder thick with printouts. business registration documents, tax filings, and most interesting of all, a list of Med Supply Solutions corporate officers. Brandon Keller was listed as Regional Sales Director, but the company president was someone named David Hartwell. Hartwell, I said aloud. Ring a bell? That's Sophie's maiden name. Barb's eyebrows shot up. Family business? I flipped through more documents. David Hartwell, age 45, address in Portland. Sophie had a brother named David who worked in medical sales. I'd met him twice in 15 years of marriage. Sophie always said they weren't close. They've been planning this for months, I realized. Maybe longer. Sophie's brother sets up a shell company. Brandon gets hired as the sales rep. Sophie feeds them inside information about our bids. That's conspiracy. That's exactly what it is. My phone rang. Jim Parsons. Eli, I've got some interesting news. I had a colleague run a background check on Brandon Keller. What did you find? He's been married 3 times, divorced 3 times. Each divorce involved allegations of adultery, and in 2 cases, there were accusations of financial impropriety. He's done this before. Looks like it. There's more. His current employer, officially, he works for a company called Northeast Medical Sales, but they have no record of him working on any hospital contracts in Maine. So he's freelancing. Or worse. Eli, I think you need to talk to the police. After I hung up, I sat in my office staring at the evidence Barb had compiled. Sophie hadn't just cheated on me. She'd recruited her brother and her lover to systematically destroy my business. They'd stolen contracts worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. This wasn't a marriage falling apart. This was a coordinated attack. My phone buzzed. Text message from Sophie. I need to get more of my things. Will Saturday morning work? I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. Saturday's fine. Bring Brandon if you want. I'd like to talk to him. Her response came quickly. About what? Business. No response to that. I walked out to Barb's desk. How do you feel about making some phone calls? What kind of phone calls? The kind where you mention to people that Brandon Keller might not be who he claims to be. The kind where you suggest they might want to verify his credentials before doing business with him. Barb smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. I love making those kinds of phone calls. Good, because we're going to remind this town that when you mess with North Industrial Supply, you mess with the whole North family. What about Sophie? I thought about my wife, probably sitting in Brandon's apartment right now, planning their next move, thinking she'd outsmarted the dumb contractor who'd never been enough for her. Sophie's about to learn that 15 years of marriage taught her a lot about me, but apparently she wasn't paying attention to the important parts. Barb cracked her knuckles again. This is going to be fun. For the first time in months, I agreed with her completely. Friday afternoon, I was replacing a water heater for the Millers when my phone rang. Mrs. Miller answered it in the kitchen while I worked in the basement. Eli, it's for you, says it's important. I climbed upstairs, wiping my hands on a rag. Mrs. Miller handed me the phone with a curious expression. This is Eli. Mr. North, this is Detective Ray Sullivan, Millfield Police. I understand you have some information about possible fraud involving local businesses. Jim Parsons had made the call like he'd promised. Yes, sir. I have documentation. Can you come in this afternoon? Say around 4? I'll be there. The Millfield Police Department occupied a brick building that used to be a post office. Detective Sullivan was a big man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked like he'd seen everything twice and wasn't impressed either time. Tell me what you've got, he said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. I laid out everything. The computer access logs showing Sophie had stolen confidential business information. The connection between Brandon Keller and Med Supply Solutions. The fact that David Hartwell, Sophie's brother, was the company president. Sullivan studied the documents, occasionally asking questions. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. This is good work, Mr. North, thorough. But I have to ask, How much of this is about the business fraud, and how much is about your wife sleeping around? Both, I said. But the fraud is real, regardless of my personal feelings. Fair enough. What do you want from us? I want them investigated. I want the hospital to know they awarded a contract based on stolen information. And I want Brandon Keller to understand that there are consequences for his actions. Sullivan nodded slowly. We'll look into it. But Mr. North, I have to warn you, this kind of case can take months to develop. Don't expect quick results. I'm a patient man, detective. Good, because revenge is a dish best served cold, as they say. I left the police station feeling like I'd lit a fuse. Now I just had to wait for the explosion. Saturday morning came gray and drizzling. Sophie's text had said she'd be by around 10 to collect more of her belongings. At 9:45, I was in the kitchen drinking coffee when the Tesla pulled into my driveway. Sophie got out alone. No Brandon. Interesting. She knocked on the front door like a visitor. I took my time answering. Where's your boyfriend? He's not my boyfriend, Eli. We're adults in a relationship. How adult of you. Come in. Sophie stepped inside, looking around like she was seeing the place for the first time. Everything was exactly as she'd left it, but somehow different. Cleaner, maybe. Less cluttered with the debris of a failing marriage. I need to get some books from the den, and there are some photos I'd like. Help yourself. She started toward the den, then stopped. Eli, I know you're angry, but we can handle this like civilized people. Can we? Because I'm not sure your brother David would agree. Sophie went very still. What about David? Med Supply Solutions. Cute name. Very professional sounding. The color drained from Sophie's face. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Just like you don't know that Brandon's been married 3 times. Just like you don't know that he's not actually authorized to bid on hospital contracts. Sophie sat down heavily in the chair by the window. The chair where she used to read on Sunday mornings, back when we had Sunday mornings together. How did you find out? I'm not as stupid as you thought I was. Eli, it's not what you think. Really? Because I think you and your brother and your boyfriend conspired to steal confidential information from my company and use it to undercut my bids. I think you've been planning this for months, maybe years, and I think you figured I'd never be smart enough to put it together. Sophie's hands were shaking. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? David needed help getting established. Brandon had the connections. They just needed some market intelligence to get started. Market intelligence. Is that what we're calling theft now? It wasn't theft. It was information sharing between business partners. We're not business partners, Sophie. We're married. Or we were. Sophie looked up at me, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd fallen in love with. Vulnerable, uncertain, maybe even sorry. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I thought maybe if David's company succeeded, if Brandon proved himself, maybe we could all work together. Maybe you'd see that there were bigger opportunities out there. So you decided to destroy my business to save it? I decided to expand your thinking. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by the righteous anger I'd been seeing more and more over the past year. Sophie stood up, pacing to the window. You're so content with your little company, your little life, your little dreams. You never want to grow, never want to take risks, never want to be more than you are. And Brandon does? Brandon sees possibilities, he sees potential. He sees an easy mark. Sophie spun around, her eyes flashing. You don't know him. I know he's a con man who's done this before. I know he's married 3 other women and cheated on all of them. I know he's not who he claims to be. That's not true. Ask him about his previous wives. Ask him about Northeast Medical Sales and why they have no record of him working in Maine. Ask him why the police are very interested in talking to him about business fraud. Sophie's face went white again. The police? Fraud is a crime, Sophie. Conspiracy is a crime. Theft of trade secrets is a crime. Did you really think there wouldn't be consequences? Eli, please. You can't do this. I didn't do anything. You did. You and David and Brandon. I just documented it. Sophie sank back into the chair. For the first time since this whole mess started, she looked genuinely afraid. What happens now? Now you pack your things and leave. The lawyers handle the divorce, the police handle the fraud investigation, and I go back to running my business. What about us? There is no us. You made that clear when you chose to betray me instead of talking to me. Sophie was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the yard where we used to plant flowers together. I did love you, she said finally. I know, but you loved the idea of something better more. She went to the den and packed a box of books and photo albums. I watched from the kitchen, drinking coffee and thinking about the future. For the first time in months, it looked like something I might actually want to live. When Sophie was ready to leave, she stopped at the front door. Eli, if the police come asking questions, I'll tell them the truth, just like I always have. The truth can be complicated. Not really. You stole from me, lied to me, and cheated on me. Everything else is just details. Sophie looked like she wanted to say something else, but changed her mind. She walked out to the Tesla, loaded her box in the back, and drove away. I watched her go, then walked to the phone and called Barb. How'd it go? She asked. Better than expected. She confirmed everything. What's next? Next, we wait for the police to do their job. And we remind this town that North Industrial Supply is still here, still honest, and still the best choice for their business needs. Sounds like a plan. I hung up and looked around my house. It felt different now. Emptier, but also cleaner. Like a weight had been lifted. Mrs. Cundy appeared at the kitchen window, gesturing toward her back door. I walked over, and she handed me a cup of coffee through the screen. Saw Sophie leave, she said. Last time, I think. Good. That girl never deserved you. Thanks, Mrs. Cundy. Eli, there's something I should tell you. About those photos someone sent you. I looked at her carefully. What about them? Sometimes old ladies with nothing better to do notice things. Sometimes they even take pictures of things they notice. Mrs. Cundy smiled innocently and went back to her kitchen, leaving me standing there with my coffee and a growing appreciation for nosy neighbors. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Brandon. I typed back. No, we don't. This doesn't have to get ugly. Too late for that. You're making a mistake. I looked at the message for a long moment, then typed, I've made a lot of mistakes. Trusting my wife was one. Trusting her boyfriend was another. But calling the police? That wasn't a mistake. That was justice. No response. I went back inside, poured another cup of coffee, and started planning my next move. Brandon Keller and David Hartwell thought they'd outsmarted a small-town contractor. They were about to learn otherwise. Monday morning brought news that changed everything. Barb was already at her desk when I arrived, practically vibrating with excitement. Eli, you need to see this. She handed me a newspaper, the Millfield Gazette. The headline read, Local hospital contract under investigation for fraud. The article was brief but damaging. It mentioned that police were investigating allegations that confidential bid information had been stolen and used to manipulate the contract award process. Med Supply Solutions was named specifically, along with individuals connected to competing firms. How did this get out so fast? I asked. Small-town newspaper. Ray Sullivan's brother-in-law works there. My phone was already ringing. The first call was from Pete Morrison. Eli saw the paper. Is this about your wife and that Keller guy? Partly. Well, I hope you nail them. That kind of thing makes all of us look bad. The second call was from Maria Santos. Eli, I'm so sorry about what happened. Is there anything I can do? The third call was from Jim Parsons. The newspaper article was well-timed. Sophie's going to be under a lot of pressure now. Good. There's something else. I got a call this morning from Brandon Keller's lawyer. They want to negotiate. Negotiate what? A settlement. Drop the criminal complaints, and they'll make financial restitution for the lost contracts. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Eli, it might be worth considering. Criminal cases are unpredictable and, Jim, they didn't just steal money from me. They stole 15 years of marriage, my trust, and my reputation. Money doesn't fix that. What do you want? I want everyone in this town to know exactly who they're dealing with. I want Brandon Keller to leave Maine and never come back. And I want Sophie to understand that actions have consequences. That's not very forgiving. I'm not feeling very forgiving. By Wednesday, the story had grown legs. The Portland Press-Herald picked it up, then the Bangor Daily News. Medical supply fraud investigation expands, read one headline. Hospital contracts under scrutiny, read another. Sophie called me Wednesday night. She sounded tired and scared. Eli, we need to talk. I thought we covered everything on Saturday. The police want to interview me tomorrow. My lawyer says I could be charged as an accessory. Probably. This is destroying my career. The hospital put me on administrative leave pending the investigation. Actions have consequences, Sophie. Please, I know I hurt you, but this is ruining my life. You ruined your own life. You just didn't think you'd get caught. What do you want from me? I want you to tell the truth. I want you to admit what you did, and I want you to face the consequences like an adult. And if I do that, then maybe you can start rebuilding your life somewhere else. The line was quiet for a long moment. I never meant for it to go this far, Sophie said finally. Yes, you did. You meant for it to go exactly this far. You just thought you were smarter than everyone else. Thursday afternoon, Detective Sullivan called. Mr. North thought you'd like to know. We arrested Brandon Keller this morning. What's the charge? Multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and theft of trade secrets. Turns out this isn't his first time. We found evidence of similar schemes in 2 other states. What about Sophie? She's cooperating. Gave us a full statement about how the scheme worked. Her brother David is cooperating too. Apparently Brandon convinced them both that this was just aggressive business practice, not fraud. Do you believe that? Sullivan chuckled grimly. Your wife's not as smart as she thinks she is, but she's not stupid either. She knew what she was doing, but her cooperation might help her avoid jail time. And Brandon? Brandon's looking at serious prison time. His lawyer's already talking about a plea deal. Friday morning, I was in my office when Barb knocked on the door. Sophie's here. Says she needs to talk to you. Sophie looked terrible. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wasn't wearing makeup, and her clothes looked like she'd slept in them. The polished, ambitious woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who looked broken and lost. 5 minutes, I said. Thank you. Sophie sat down across from my desk, in the chair where clients usually sat to discuss their projects. I wanted you to hear this from me before you read it in the paper. Hear what? I'm pleading guilty to conspiracy and theft of trade secrets. My lawyer worked out a deal: probation, restitution, and community service. No jail time? No jail time, but I have to resign from the hospital, and I'll probably never work in HR again. I nodded. What about Brandon? Brandon lied to me about everything. His background, his authority to make deals, his feelings for me. Sophie's voice cracked slightly. He used me, just like he used David. We were just tools to him. And David? David's pleading guilty, too. He's losing his business license and paying a huge fine, but he's cooperating fully, so he'll avoid prison. Sophie looked up at me, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. Genuine remorse. Eli, I know I destroyed everything between us. I know I hurt you in ways that can't be fixed, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. I appreciate that. Is there any chance, any possibility that someday we might— No, I said gently. There's not. Sophie nodded, tears starting to flow. I understand. Sophie, can I ask you something? Of course. When did you stop loving me? When did you decide I wasn't enough? Sophie was quiet for a long time, thinking. I don't think I ever stopped loving you, she said finally. I think I stopped loving myself. And I started believing that if I could just be more successful, more important, more impressive, then I'd be worthy of love. You were always worthy of love. I know that now, but by the time I figured it out, I'd already thrown away the best thing in my life. Sophie stood up, wiping her eyes with a tissue. I'm moving back to Portland, starting over. I don't know what I'll do for work, but I'll figure something out. You will. You're stronger than you think. Thank you for saying that. Sophie walked to the door, then turned back. Eli, I hope someday you find someone who appreciates what an amazing man you are. Someone who doesn't need you to be anything other than exactly who you are. Take care of yourself, Sophie. After she left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about 15 years of marriage and how it had all come apart. I felt sad, but also relieved, and for the first time in months I felt like I could breathe freely. Barb knocked on the door. You okay? Yeah, I think I am. Good. Because we've got 3 new contract bids to prepare, and the phone's been ringing all morning with people wanting to do business with us. Why? Barb smiled. Turns out people like doing business with honest companies. Who knew? That evening, I was in my workshop, actually building something this time, a bookshelf for Mrs. Cundy, when my phone rang. Unknown number. This is Eli. Mr. North, this is David Hartwell, Sophie's brother. I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. What do you want, David? I wanted to apologize and to thank you. Thank me? For stopping us before we got in any deeper. Brandon had plans, bigger schemes, more victims. If you hadn't exposed him when you did, we would have ended up in federal prison instead of just losing our businesses. I didn't do it for you. I know, but I'm grateful anyway. Sophie told me what she put you through. You didn't deserve any of it. No, I didn't. For what it's worth, she really is sorry. And she really did love you, even when she was making terrible choices. I know. Take care of yourself, Mr. North. And again, thank you. After David hung up, I went back to work on Mrs. Cundy's bookshelf. The wood was pine, local lumber from a mill I'd been buying from for 20 years. Honest wood cut by honest people, sold at an honest price. I thought about Sophie, probably packing up her life in Portland, trying to figure out what came next. I thought about Brandon, sitting in a jail cell, finally facing the results of his actions. I thought about David, discovering the hard way that shortcuts usually lead nowhere. But mostly, I thought about tomorrow, about the contracts Barb had mentioned, about the business we were building, about the life I was reclaiming. My phone buzzed. Text message from Mrs. Cundy. Coffee's on if you want to talk. I looked at the bookshelf, nearly finished, then at the text message. Mrs. Cundy made terrible coffee, but she was a good listener. And she'd been the one who'd helped me see what was really happening when I was too close to notice. I put down my tools and headed next door. It was time to start the next chapter of my life, and I could think of worse ways to begin than with a cup of bad coffee and a conversation with a friend. The workshop could wait, the bookshelf could wait, everything else could wait. For the first time in months, I had all the time in the world.